We were, but this evening is going to be a little bit of a different lesson. The book of Revelation is just overwhelming at times, just to be, there's no better way to put it. I mean, it's just can be completely overwhelming. The amount of information that we cover and the amount of things that God revealed to John and the symbolism that we've tried to tackle to the best of our limited ability. I had someone tell me the other day, he said, I've been watching your study on Revelation on Wednesday night. And I said, oh, well, good. I hope you enjoy it. He said, and I'm also reading J. Vernon McGee Revelation during the same time. And I said, that's like going to Einstein and learning and then coming to the substitute math teacher to find out how to do algebra. I said that's you should just stick with J. Vernon. But there is so much. There's just literally so much information to cover and so much ground to go over. We're going to retread a little bit, and we're going to do something, and this is Signs of the Times Part 1. Now, Part 2 will not be next Wednesday, so don't get confused. I'm just doing this as taking a few moments and setting aside some time to look at how everything we just saw in Revelations 11, 12, and 13, how that all interconnects and how we can take our newspaper or we can get online. Nobody reads a newspaper anymore, do they? We can get online or get on our phone and we can look at current events and we can see what is happening. It's unfolding right before our very eyes. And I was speaking with my friend. We were talking about J. Vernon McGee. And I believe he died in the 70s or 80s. And I said, just imagine, if you will, as Dr. McGee was reading through Revelation and he gets to this portion that we're going to cover this evening in the mark of the beast, and how foreign that ideal must have seemed to him. How is it possible that God is going to work this out so that people will have to have a mark on their hand or their forehead to buy something? I remember watching a movie, it's actually a set of movies when I was at Rose Hill Christian School, and they were actually directed and produced by people that used to do horror films, and they all got saved. So they started making these movies, Christian movies, and they made a series about the end times. And I remember watching it, and I'll be completely honest, they were a little corny, a little cheesy. But whenever they were going through the mark of the beast, it was a tattoo in your forehead and in your head. But now, with the technology we have, we see how these things are unfolding literally every day. So that's what these aside lessons are going to be, these signs of the time. So in lesson 17, we're going to look at three things. There was a lot more I wanted to cover, but we just don't have an hour and a half in a lecture hall to do it. So we'll go through these three specific things. Now, there will be other signs of the times lessons as we proceed forward in the study in Revelation. But with this one, where we just came through looking at these topics, we must see how these things fit in our day-to-day lives today. First off, we're going to look at the woman and the red dragon. Remember, we looked at the woman and the red dragon in chapter 12. And we're going to look at, in particular, anti-Semitism in the world today. Anti-Semitism meaning those that just hate Jewish folks, those that just don't like the Jews. And we're going to look at that and see how this correlates directly with what we see the devil doing to the nation of Israel during the end times. And then we're going to look at the beast from the sea, which of course is the Antichrist and his kingdom. And then we're going to look at the beast from the land, which is the false prophet, his religion and financial control that he will exact during the tribulation time. Now, it's important to note, when we're looking at these three things, we're going to look at the anti-Semitism in the world today. And then you're going to see how that's going to open up for the Antichrist, for the devil, whenever he goes after the Jews. You see, remember, he's going to go after the entire nation of Israel to try and wipe them off the face of the earth. When we look at the beast from the sea, the Antichrist and his kingdom, we're going to look at some qualities of the Antichrist. And I'm still not going to give you a guess on who I think he is or who he could be. But we will look at his kingdom and how the world today is already setting up for the future kingdom of the Antichrist and who I think are going to be some key players and how I think this is going to shake out. And then we're going to look at the beast from the land, or the false prophet. We're going to look at his religion in particular. We're going to look at how in the world will this false prophet be able to bring all the religions of the world together. I mean, after all, Christians and Muslims kill each other every day. Jews and Muslims kill each other every day. Buddhists don't particularly like any of us. So how are all the world religions going to fall under a one world religion? That's impossible. It can never happen. I'm going to show you it's happening right now. Financial control. We're going to talk about that good old mark of the beast and what it is and what it isn't. And we're going to look at some things and give you some alarming numbers about how the mark of the beast is already, all the things are lining up for it right now. But first, let's review the woman and the red dragon. Revelation 12:13 says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast onto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. So if you remember from Revelation 12, of course, the dragon is that old serpent, the devil, and he hates the woman, which is the nation of Israel. Satan has always hated the nation of Israel. The persecution and animosity that the devil has for the Jewish nation will reach a crescendo during the tribulation. If you remember in Revelation 12, verse 17, it says this, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, meaning angry, meaning blind mad, as they would say down in Kentucky where I'm from. He was blind mad at the woman. And he went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So we see and we remember in Revelation 12 that the devil is so angry with the Jewish nation after he's cast out and he's lost his last bit of access to God and to the throne room. And he comes down to the earth, and the first thing he does is go after the nation of Israel. And if you remember Revelation chapter 12, God will take them and they will be flown with the wings of eagles into a safe place in the desert. And remember, the devil will bring an army, the Antichrist will raise an army, and they will come after the woman, and they will try to kill her, and God will supernaturally protect them. Now, that seems far-fetched to some folks. How in the world is it going to be possible that the world at large will sign off and say it's okay for the Antichrist, under the guise of the devil, under the power of the devil, to go and wipe the Jews off the face of the earth? Because that's what he's going to want to do. That would never happen. We live in a modern society and we're enlightened people. And Pastor, I just don't think that really clicks. I don't think that would happen. I don't think that's possible. Well, I'm quoting an organization that I typically despise. I'm going to be honest. NPR, National Public Radio. Liberals are us. Even they get it right sometimes. NPR in December 2021 said this, according to the Anti-Defamation League, 2021 was the highest year on record for documented reports of harassment, vandalism, and violence directed against Jews. The Watchdog Group has tracked these incidents since 1979. 2021 was the highest since they started tracking. And it says that 2022 will look a lot like last year. I can tell you after doing some follow-up research that yes, 2022 did look a lot like 2021. In fact, it was worse. They saw a 16% increase, and in 2023, we're already on our way to set a record high 18% if things keep going the way they are. Have you noticed on television? I like to watch ads, and ads really entertain me more than television sometimes. And what do you see now but ads about anti-Semitism on national television? About how the Jews are hated. They are. They're persecuted. They have been. It's only going to get worse. What do you think? How do you think it's going to be that this man, the Antichrist, will be able to lead armies of people to try and wipe out the Jewish nation? Now remember, Hitler tried to do it. Hitler killed an estimated 6 million Jewish people. 6 million is the best estimate they can come up with. If you've never been to our nation's capital and gone to the Holocaust Museum, I would highly encourage you to do so. I would highly encourage you to do so with a box of tissues and a really strong stomach. You see, that's why so many people, when they were talking about the Antichrist, they would point to Hitler. Hey, this is the guy. It wasn't the guy. The guy is going to be worse than him. Hard to believe. You can't see this graph very well up here. I was hoping you'd see it better in your handout, and unfortunately I can't see it much better. But this is actually a graph from that group that NPR quoted. And if I'm going to quote a couple different organizations that I don't particularly agree with, and I'm doing that because it's ironic that, yes, I can agree with NPR every now and then. But adult population survey, so there were 4.16, let's see, that's hundreds, thousands, millions, 4.16 billion. That's how I read that. Adult population of surveyed countries. Individuals with anti-Semitic views, 1 billion. Out of 4.6 billion. So that's an estimated 26% of people in the world have anti-Semitic views and lean anti-Semitic. 74% of people in the world, 74% of the people they interviewed said they have never met and do not know any Jewish individuals. So this is how we're seeing this set up. You would think, they say lightning never strikes the same place twice. How is it that the Antichrist, how is it that the devil will lead the world again against the nation of Israel? Well, the world has never stopped hating the nation of Israel, you see. So that's one argument that I heard from someone. I just don't believe that. I don't think that the world would try and wipe off the nation of Israel off the face of the earth. You can see right here that they would. And there are people in our own country, in our own Congress and Senate, and we're leaders of our own nation, that they would say, hey, we should stop supporting Israel right now. They cost too much money. They're too big of an investment for us. But we all know that God promised Abraham, those that bless you I will bless, those that curse you I will curse, and God never breaks his promises. So that's the first thing we have to look at, is how everything is set up right now. If 26% of the world's population has anti-Semitic tendencies, and 74% of the world's population know no Jewish individuals and never have met a Jewish individual, how hard do you think it would be to convince for 25% that hate to convince 74% that don't care to go along with them? If you don't think that the people just go around like sheep, look at our last presidential election. No one voted for Joe Biden. They voted against Donald Trump. That's how ignorant we are. That's how ignorant we are. We don't vote for somebody. I'm not voting for them. I don't like them. Well, what? But that shows the mentality of the world today. That shows how we think. That shows how the dragon will make his last siege on the woman. So those were just some little food for thought. Just something I found very interesting, because as I was watching television the other night and I saw that commercial come on about how Jews are one of the most repressed people in the world, and the only thing I could think of was Revelation chapter 12. That was the only thing that came to my mind. And I thought that was very interesting to see how prophecy is literally unfolding before our eyes. How the world loved the nation of Israel and the Jewish people after they became a nation again. After the Holocaust, we wanted to build them back up. We wanted to love them. There was no anti-Semitism allowed. And look where we are now. We're right back to worse than what it was before. But now let's look at the beast from the sea, the Antichrist. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on these next two characters. Revelation 13:1 says this, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." And we looked at this at length when we went through Revelation 13, and we said that this was the Antichrist, or the Antichrist, however you prefer to say that. I bounce around and say it different ways because I want to please everybody. I'm a people pleaser. But the Antichrist. We know a few things about the Antichrist. I want to give you some thoughts And then you can draw conclusions, if you will, on who you think he may be if he's alive today, and I think he is. First off, we know that the Antichrist will be on the world stage at the time of the rapture. Because in Revelation 6:1, the very first seal that is opened, if you remember way back, the very first seal that is opened reveals who? The Antichrist. That's when we see him first, just right after the rapture. And he comes out and he signs a 7-year peace treaty. And that, if people are watching any kind of study about the end times during that time, I pray they see that and it's right, and they're reading that or hearing that right when they announce the peace treaty. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is now. But he will sign. So we know that he will be on the world stage right from the beginning. And we'll know then, we have to surmise then, that if we believe the rapture is imminent at any day, we have to surmise that he's on the world stage right now. You see, it's not going to be just some Joe Blow that comes out of a plant somewhere, or some guy that just happens to be tending sheep in the Middle East, and I'm the Antichrist. No, he's going to be influential before the rapture, I believe. And also we pointed out that in Revelation 13:1 that he comes out of the sea, he comes out of the Gentile nations of the world. And we will look at, when we look at the false prophet, we talked about how there's so much more ocean in the world than there is land. So coming from the sea, to me, shows a couple things. One, he's coming out of the Gentile nations. He's already going to be known. He's just going to rise to power. He'll already be there waiting, and then he'll just take his power up. And then we'll see later that the false prophet, of course, where he comes from the land, he'll be just regionally known, I think. I don't think he'll be worldwide like the Antichrist will be. But he will be loved and supported by all. Revelation 13:4 and 13:8 both show us that they'll love him, they'll adore him. Everyone will say, who can stand against the beast? Remember, he'll take a wound to his head halfway through the tribulation period, 3.5 years after he's been leading. He'll take a wound, and then next thing you know, he'll be risen from the dead. And they'll love him, universally loved. He will be an eloquent speaker. Bible says in Revelation 13:5, he has the tongue of a devil or of a dragon, I believe is how the Word of God puts it. He'll be eloquent, and he will have absolute power. Now, I'm not going to give you a guess as to who I think it is, but I will tell you this. Look now at this list of what we know for sure about the Antichrist. And bear in mind, the devil has to have a man in the wings waiting at all times for all generations, because he doesn't know when Jesus is coming back. So all those books you have on your shelf that were written in the 80s, and they said that this, the Ayatollah was the Antichrist, maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe that was the devil's guy for that generation, but he's dead and that generation's over with. So who do you think? Sometimes I'll watch news conferences and I'll be like, who's that guy behind the guy? Who's that guy? Oh, he whispered in his ear. That's the guy. And we won't have to wonder after the rapture, because it will be made apparent pretty quickly who the guy is. But there are a lot of usual suspects out there. I've heard names like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and even the president of Ukraine. I've heard a lot of names thrown around. We don't really know. But boy, do I have some theories. The beast from the sea. You cannot separate the Antichrist from his kingdom. It's proven out all throughout Revelation 13. They talk about the Antichrist and the nations that he controls, his kingdom, as one and the same. The beast from the sea has 7 heads and 10 horns in 13:1, which represents the old Roman Empire, which has been reborn. It will be comprised of 10 nations. 10 nations, keep that number in mind. 10 nations, I'll say it again, will be where he has the seat of his power. In these nations, they'll support the Antichrist politically, financially, and militarily. So I think it stands to reason, my friends, that whomever the Antichrist is, before the rapture happens, these 10 nations will already have his support. He'll have their support in some way. It will just make more sense. Remember, when God caused the flood, he made it rain and he used the fountains of the deep. God uses what's in place already. God could have just said, water, and it would have been water. But he uses practical things. So I believe that whomever this man is, that these kingdoms, these 10 nations will already support him in some way, and then he will rise to the top, and it will be apparent that he is the de facto leader. Just for your information, this is a picture that red, all that red, this is the old Roman Empire. This is in 117 AD. That's when the Roman Empire was at the height of its power. And that also happens to be around about the same time that a guy named John got thrown on the Isle of Patmos, and he wrote the book of Revelation. So here we see what the old Roman Empire looked like. Notice some of these nations: Africa, Britain, see that? Britannia, that's Britain. Look at some of these nations. Some of these nations over here. Armenia. You see all of these nations that comprise the old Roman Empire. There are actually 10 main ones we talked about in our lesson. We won't go through them again. So, Pastor David, you think all these countries here are going to be the ones? No, I do not. But I think they'll be representatives of these countries in one way or the other. We'll continue to look at this kingdom. It will be, we have to know that you hear, when you talk about Revelation and tribulation, you hear phrases like one world government, one world, new world order. You know, those are things you hear in all those movies that kind of semi-mock and semi-try to be like the book of Revelations. Well, you have to know that these 10 nations will be comprising a 10-nation, what we would call a federation, or a worldwide intergovernmental organization. Boy, that's a good word, isn't it? We've had a few big ones since the time of the clock has started ticking. Before our, what we'll call our rapture clock, when Israel became a nation again, before that clock started ticking, you had the League of Nations. They were formed at the end of World War I. And what was their mission? This was their mission statement in a nutshell: international peace and security. So when these 10 nations came together, there were Bible scholars that said, oh my goodness, it's happening. Well, what happened after World War I? Well, 20-some years later, in 1946, whenever World War II came around, the League of Nations dissolved. And then they came out with something better at the end of World War II, the United Nations. 1945 till present. And what was their mission? What's their mission? International peace and security. And all the Bible scholars said, oh, it's the UN. We were wrong. League of Nations is old news. This is it. This is where the 10 nations are going to come out of. The UN is humongous. Far more than 10 nations now. So I have an alternate theory. Worldwide Intergovernmental Organizations. BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. It's an acronym. The phrase was coined in 2001 by someone at Goldman Sachs, referring to the BRIC at that time, Brazil, Russia, India, China, block of nations, in an economic sense, not a world power, not a peace sense. But now it is BRICS because South Africa has joined this organization. So really it was founded in 2001, but the first summit was held in 2009. The Alliance of Nations hopes to dominate the world economy by 2050. And world economists say they're going to do it, probably. You see, the U.S. dollar has been the trading currency of choice ever since the end of World War II, and we became a superpower. We dropped the bomb, remember? Everybody talks about World War II. Well, we ended it in a big bang, and people were scared to death of us. We entered into the Cold War and the space race, and all of these things made the U.S. dollar top-notch. You can go in any country in the world and say, hey, I'll give you a $5 bill, or I'll give you 5,000 rupees. They'll say, give me the $5 bill. Well, BRICS was actually organized as an economic summit. And they came together and they said, we want to fight the evil Westerners. We want those Americans off their seat of power. And so Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa, they all got together and said, guess what? We take up more land mass than America ever thought of. Guess what? We have more people than they ever thought of. Guess what? We'll have more buying power. So they're coming out with their very own currency, a currency that certain nations in Africa will take above the dollar, and there will be more nations to follow. You mark my words. You don't think I'm telling you the truth, the stock market's boring. You need to go and see what your dollar bill is trading for on the open market. It's usually down on a typical day by 40 to 60%. Well, what's going up? Boom. Bigger, newer, better bricks. That's what's going to go up. Well, why, Pastor David, would you be so interested in this group of countries like Brazil and Russia? Wait a second. They're mentioned in Revelation. Russia is. We'll talk about them here before too long. And China also alluded to in Revelation. We'll talk about them as well. And South Africa. Well, you remember when we looked at that big map? And there was some Africa in that 10 nations. Now, I'm not saying that the BRICS nations will be the 10-nation federation that the Antichrist rules, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't add 5 more members before too long. The first time I heard about these people, my head went, why aren't we talking about this? Formed as an economic alliance between these nations, but if you look at the minutes of their meetings that they've had in consecutive years since 2009, more and more they talk about world geopolitical problems. They talk about war. They talk about peace. They talk about all the things that governments talk about when they get together. People are now saying that they think they're more powerful than the G7, which America heads. If you don't believe me, just go and see how much you get for $1 at the store. It's not even a Dollar Tree anymore. It's $1.09. It's Dollar Tree Plus. What's that mean? More expensive. They have established their own currency that will rival the U.S. dollar as a universally accepted form of currency for international trade. Several countries have applied to join. I want you to notice the short list that I chose to include. There's about 8 or 9 that want to join. Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt have all applied to join. How much you want to bet they get in? This is what the BRICS nations look like now. Those red, blue, and yellow areas in orange. You can't see the orange very well. Russia, China, India, Brazil. Who lives in this Middle Eastern part of the world? Israel. They're going to be surrounded, aren't they? The red is who is in. It's hard to see. But the orange is who wants to join. Right here wants to join. Right here wants to join. Right here wants to join. Right here, right here, right here, right here. All these people want in. You know, if you look at the orange on this map, so we got BRICS. That's 5. I can count. If you look on that map, there's 6 that want to join. And I bet there's 1 that they wouldn't give a hoot and a holler about if they joined or not. So there's already 10. Do I believe that the BRICS nations will have something to do with the end of times, it's a safe bet to say that as excited as I got during the segment, yes. I don't have a picture of the leaders of the BRICS nations, but look at them. It's like a who's who of who wants to kill a Jew. That's the truth. It's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a who's who of who wants to kill an American. It looks like a who's who of we want to be in charge of things. Remember that thing you used to do in high school? Who's who in high school today? Who's who in crazy world leaders today? That's who leads the BRICS nations. And I don't believe that any of them is the Antichrist, but I believe he will rule them and reign them, and they will follow him. So let's look at the beast from the land. That's just an opinion. We watch this 30 years from now and the Lord ain't come back and the BRICS nations are gone. They'll be like, aha, he was wrong. It was just an opinion. Romans 13, 11 through 12. And behold, another beast coming up out of the earth. And he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. We got to get through this quick because I'm trying to get out of here a decent hour. The false prophet, that's the beast from the land, the beast from the earth. We know this about him. He'll be an eloquent speaker. Revelation 13, 11. He will lead the world to worship the Antichrist. And that's in verses 12 and 14. And he will perform signs and miracles through the power of Satan. And that is 13:13. So this beast from the land, this false prophet, I don't have any idea in the world. I don't even have a guess who I think this guy might be. I think he's going to be somebody that me and you may not even know in the great OUS of A. I think he'll be highly influential in the European countries of the world. That's honestly my best guess. But I don't know. He could be an American. We don't know. But the false prophet, we know this about him. We won't venture guesses about him other than to say he will be the Antichrist's biggest fan. He will lead the world to create a graven image of the Antichrist and worship it. Revelation 13:14 through 15. Remember, they call it the image of the beast. And it says that the image of the beast, that he will cause all men to worship the image of the beast. And he's going to cause it to talk and speak. And they'll want to worship it. With this image of the beast, he will control the world's religion. The only religion will be worship the Antichrist. And by default, worship the devil. And he will control the world's economy with what we commonly refer to as the mark of the beast. So let's dive into this really quickly. He will create a graven image into the Antichrist. And he'll cause it to talk. I want to talk about that just one hot second. I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but I'll just leave you with this. For years, Jay Vernon and every Bible scholar would say it's going to be an idol, which makes sense. And I don't doubt that there's not going to be an idol component. There will be an idol that will be worshipped, no doubt, I'm sure. But what I tend to lean hard into now is technology. We had a president, Barack Obama, passed this bill. Remember, they started calling them Obama phones. You remember that? And they give phones out to people that couldn't afford it. I don't think that's a terrible program. I don't really care about the program. I don't have an opinion on the program. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But he started that, remember? And everybody got an Obama phone. Well, after September 11th, Congress also saw a need that underprivileged or underserved communities like Southern West Virginia, where Candace is from, and you couldn't get high-speed internet, they said you have to have high-speed internet in there within so many years. I mean, they had laws put in place. Why is it so important that everybody's connected to everything at all times? Well, that way when the image of the beast speaks, you'll be able to see it. Whether you're a bum on the street that doesn't have a house, or you're the richest man in the world. I think that's why it's so important. Do I think that Barack Obama was like, oh, I'm going to give these out for that? No, I don't think that. I think unwillingly and unwittingly, people have been setting the stage for years for what's to come. People don't know that. I don't think he was saying, oh, yeah, good. Now when the Antichrist speaks, everyone will hear. I don't think that happened. But I do think that all of these things line up as God intends. And that when the image speaks, the world will listen. The world will hear. So that's all I'm going to give you on that little piece of the image of the beast. But one world religion. The one world religion will be worship the Antichrist or die. All religions will cease to exist and only worship the Antichrist. Only worship of the Antichrist will be accepted. This abandonment of self-interest and co-worship, that's what they call it, it already exists today. You would never get a Muslim and a Jewish person and a Christian to sit down in a house of worship together in a million years, would you? We've been killing each other and hacking each other's heads off and having holy wars and having crusades. We hate each other. You'll never get those religions to stop hating each other and worship a man. Never. It'll never happen. The Higher Committee on Human Fraternity, look it up. February 4th, 2009, Pope Francis, head of the Catholic Church, and Ahmed Allah, I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry, Grand Imam of the he's a Muslim. He's the highest ranking Christian in the world and the highest ranking Muslim. They got together in Dubai, of all places, and they signed a document, and it's called the Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together. That was in 2019. The Pope and his Muslim friend got together, and they signed a little thing saying this, that we're all going to get along. Well, they were inspired in Dubai that they got together. And so the crown prince of Dubai gave a big chunk of land over, and he says, we're going to build something, and we're going to call it the Abrahamic Family House. And we're going to have Muslims and Jews and Christians all worship together. It opened in 2023. You can go to Dubai, and it's there right now. There will never be a one-world religion. This is where you're wrong. There already is the groundwork for a one-world religion. Also, notice 2019 is when the Pope and I don't know what you call, I don't want to disrespecting the Muslim clergy, I don't know what you call them, I don't want to be mean, but when these two guys got together, 2019, they built these three humongous things I'm going to show you in a second by 2023. And that also flies in the face when people say, they'll never build the temple back in that short a time. They built 3 temples. This is the hierarchy. These are the men in charge of this. I won't read all their names for sake of time, but I have them here. I would like to just draw your attention to a few things about them. You have a Nobel Peace Laureate. You have a Reverend Professor Dr. Suka, I think is how you say his name. He's the General Secretary of the World Council of Churches, Christian churches, and a Nobel Peace Laureate. You have the Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Elders. You have a rabbi, Bruce Lustig. He's the senior rabbi of Washington Hebrew Congregation, one of the biggest Hebrew congregations in North America. You have a cardinal. You have a professor. These are the people, this picture right here, these are the people that are heading up a one-world religion. And that's what it looks like. You've got a house of worship for Muslims and Christians and Jews, and they all come here together and worship together. If you don't think that we're on the verge of something, you're crazy, because Muslims and Christians and Jews have been killing each other as long as there have been Muslims and Christians and Jews. Oh my. I'm not one for jihad and we should hate people because of their religion. I'm not preaching that. I'm just saying that people said it could never happen, and it has. There'll never be a one-world religion. It looks like we're well on our way. Well on our way. You can go, if you go to Dubai, check it out. Mark of the Beast, we're almost done. The false prophet will control all world commerce by implementing what we know as the mark of the beast. That's Revelation 13, 16 through 17. So in order for this to happen, let's talk about some practical things that have to happen in order for there to be a mark of the beast to work. One, there has to be a universally accepted currency. It will be needed to ensure the process. Oh, remember we talked about those BRICS guys. I tell you what, if BRICS never comes into fruition, the U.S. dollar bill has fit the bill since the end of World War II. You can spend it anywhere. Somebody gives me a Canadian quarter, and I'm like, what is this? Fake money. You can give a U.S. quarter anywhere in the world, and they're like, woohoo! We've had a one-world currency since the end of World War II. And everybody's like, we need a one-world currency. We've actually had it. But I think the BRICS money will make even more sense for the mark of the beast because it'll already be an international property. And let's face it, the world's not a huge fan of us. So I really think, and remember I said, what was the BRICS bloc formed for? Economic domination. How better to have economic domination than for the false prophet to be your CCO? Mark of the beast. As banks fell, Federal Reserve in the U.S. gains more control of the financial institutions in the United States. So remember Silicon Valley banks started to fail. Oh! Who stepped in? U.S. government. What does that mean? Those banks are no longer private entities. They belong to the U.S. government. Why is it so important to have private banks? Well, because if you don't have private banks, then you don't have commerce. You don't have free commerce. Russia doesn't have private banks. They call it communism. The thing about free markets, when the government steps in and takes control of the banks, they ensure that those banks won't fail. But the government control of banks also ensures a false prophet will have absolutely no opposition to the mark of the beast being implemented. Do you know that in the great United States of America, our banking has changed? There's no longer a private entity that is over our banking. It is the U.S. government itself. This happened not too long ago. And as the change happens, you won't even notice it until you do. It will mean that they could just go boom. They would never do that. Okay. They will in the tribulation. That is when they will do it. So, we have to have a world-accepted currency. We already got it. And if we don't have it, we got a really good backup in BRICS that I think is going to whip the U.S. dollar for the next 30 years. And then also, we need the governments, all governments, to control their banks. The U.S. government's already taken over banks because we can't trust American people with banks. Look what they're doing to them. Let us have it. It's okay. Oh, okay. Here you go. You know, you don't have to fire a shot to take over people. All you got to do is convince them that it's for their own good, and they'll do it. The mark of the beast, practical implication of technology used to receive a mark on the forehead or hand, is already in use. Biometric chip implants have been available to the general public since 1998. I graduated in 2001. That was over 20 years. That's a long time. Yeah, but these people just put those in dogs. You can't read this very well, but I put it on there because I want you to read it at home. This is according to Thomas Tech Company. This is a huge tech firm, international, world-renowned tech company. According to an article in their magazine, it says this. According to some of the biohacking community, that's what they call it when you put a chip in your hand, as many as 100,000 people worldwide have willingly hacked their own bodies with microchip implants. The trend is particularly popular in Sweden. In 2018, it was reported that since 2015, over 4,000 Swedes have opted to have this tiny microchip implanted under their skin. So far, these tiny chips have mostly been used to open doors and send digital business cards. However, don't expect things to stop there. For example, 2017, a Swedish rail line added microchip scanning as a payment option for train service. There's a company in Sweden as well, one of the most forward-thinking, progressive companies in Sweden. I was looking for their video. I couldn't find it. I couldn't get it to play. When you go into their campus, you don't have any keys. You don't have any worries about losing anything. The only thing you got to really have is your phone, because it opens your door, it locks your door, it buys your snacks at the snack machine. It clocks you in, it clocks you out. And you don't even have to punch a time card as soon as you walk through the door. Man, that's convenient. Why wouldn't you want that? You know how many times we lose our phones in my house? At least 1,000. I got Ian a little thing to put on his wallet, on his little air tag things. So he wouldn't lose his wallet. You know what he did? He lost his phone and his wallet. He was at the gym and took his watch off one day and lost his phone, his wallet, and his watch. And they all go, doo-doo-doo-doo. That's inconvenient. Boy, it'd be convenient if I could just go, doo-doo. You see, it's convenient. Do I think these people in Sweden are going to die and go to hell and they have the mark of the beast? No. I think all this is forerunning for the mark of the beast. I remember my mom said whenever they started using the doo-doo in the grocery stores, remember that? My mom said she was in a grocery store and one was like, I ain't going to do that. That's the mark of the beast. That's not the mark of the beast. It's your groceries. Calm down. Is it setting up for? Yes. It's all prep work. JD's going to do a big job at the plant. He does prep work. Sets up for it. You're going to build a house. You do prep work. Set up for it. This is all prep work leading up to what we're going to see. And the prep work, my friends, is done. It's all completed. If we were going to build a building out here, whenever we started, people would be like, what are they doing? By the time we started, they'd be like, oh, they're building the building. That's where we're at. Oh, that's what's going to happen. That's how it's happening. There is, last thing, herein is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. The number is 606, 666. There's another flaw in your preaching, Pastor David, in this teaching. No company would ever use 666 in their marketing for the mark of the beast. Well, two things wrong with your theory. One, the Bible tells me that they'll deny the truth and believe a lie, that God himself will send a strong delusion. Or there's flying in the face of God. Ha ha, they've always said this is for the devil, and look what we're doing with it now. But this is an interesting thought. Now, this is something that went around the internet, and it's a big conspiracy thing, but it piqued my interest when I read it. You know, Microsoft has a patent on a biochip, and the number for that patent is W020200. Listen, 60606A1. 606. That got me to thinking. People are like, oh, 666. A patent number does make sense because nobody really has any idea what's the patent number on your glasses? What's the patent number on your remote? Oh. Wouldn't that be just like the devil to be like, they don't even know. You know, it says it's the number of a man, but it doesn't say that every man will know it. So, yeah, I do lean heavy, and I think it's the RFID chips. I think it's just kind of a practical thing that God's going to use. That's the end of this Signs of the Time. Now, there's a whole lot more, man. We could have went on and on. We could have went to 9 o'clock. But we're going to continue to do it. We're going to look a little more at each one of these things when we do it next time, and we're going to add to it. We're going to talk about how many vultures live in the world. You know, the condor, just fancy way of saying vulture, they used to be almost extinct. Do you know that? Do you know there's more in the world now than there ever have been? Do you know there's more over in the Middle East than there ever have been? Why does that matter? Well, because they're going to come and pick the bones of the people that died out Armageddon. In the 70s, that sounded stupid. Man, those vultures are almost extinct. Not anymore. We got rivers drying up. We got stuff happening all over the world. And the Bible says, just like Canaan, we knew that baby was coming, and it came. He was here Sunday morning, ex utero. We knew he was coming, and he's here. We're at that point. It would be like if there was a woman sitting on the front pew going, we're like, well, she ain't going to have that baby no time soon. It could be another 100 years. That's the way we sound when we say that. That's exactly how we sound when we say that. Because I believe that I'm not looking for signs. I'm listening for trumpets. Let's pray. Dear God, I come to you and I thank you for this evening. God, I thank you for showing us truth in your word. And God, I thank you for showing us things in the world around us to get us excited so we know that you are coming. Just little droplets